Rob. How are you?
Ryan, it's always the best to see you. Any excuse to spend time with you is a good one as far as I'm concerned.
I feel like I'm the lucky one. Every time I get done on a call with you, I feel better, more energized, which is what we're going to be talking about today.
That's true.
So, I'm just going to tee it up a little bit. Like, you and I came from the same industry, and I'll let you give your background. But like, I remember just coming across you and the amount of like dots that you were connected to of all these like people and processes and thought leaders that I liked. I'm like, I like that. Oh, Rob's connected. Oh, I like that. Rob's connected, like Bo Burlingham, or gosh, it was EOS, Small Giants. All these different things. And really the whole, what that this entire series is about with Finish Big, with as Bo had talked about it, it was just so natural with what you're doing now to slot you right in. So I wanted to just give for the listeners, just kind of give them a little bit of a background of the business that you have and what you're doing now. And then we're going to jump into the 10 disciplines.
Okay, fantastic. So my business partner, Joel Perlman, and I started our business out of college, but the entrepreneurial bug really bit us in ninth grade. We started selling blow pop lollipops out of our locker. And, from there, we were just doing all kinds of businesses. So it made sense that we do something out of college. We started by selling toner cartridges for these new things called laser printers, and slowly moved into an industry that you're very familiar with. And maybe some of your listeners know this about your background, but if they don't, they're about to find out. And that is that we became a copier dealer and sell multifunction printers, copiers, and managed print services is what we refer to it as.
The toner in everybody's blood, right?
That's right. Hey, it's been a good business for us. And, it's got a residual component to it, which is why many entrepreneurs are drawn to it. It has its good sides and its not so good sides, and good companies and not as good companies out there. So in like any industry, you kind of have to watch out. But we put a lot of effort and emphasis on our culture. And I'm, been very fortunate to be able to, as you say, with the connecting of the dots, to meet and be mentored by and become friends with so many really wonderful people, beginning early on with Ari Weinsweg, who is one of the co-founders of a deli in Ann Arbor called Zingerman's. And, but it's much more than a deli. It's a community of businesses. And, he has taught us so much just about running a business and having an amazing culture and having a clear vision for the future. Along the way, we met Gino Wickman, who created EOS Worldwide, the entrepreneurial operating system. So after 8 or 9 years of running our business by the seat of our pants, we got some structure to it and got some control of what the heck we were doing. And Gino was really instrumental in teaching us that, and we embraced running the business that way. We actually sold our business in 04 and bought it back in 06. So during that time, we had an opportunity to kind of think about what we might want to do next. Buying it back wasn't part of that, but when it became part of it, we thought a lot more about our culture and happened to read an amazing book called Small Giants by Bo Burlingham. You mentioned him. And I had the good fortune of meeting Bo at Zingerman's at a certain point, and we became friends and started to travel around the country. And 2 or 3 times a year with a group of about 10 other entrepreneurs and meeting small giant type companies, many of which are in your hometown, Minneapolis. We spent a little bit of time there, which was amazing. Bo introduced me to somebody by the name of Jack Stack, who created Open Book Finance. Great Game of Business is a book that he's very well known for, co-authored with Bo Burlingham. And Jack really taught us how to implement open book finance and financial literacy in our company. And so that was a very impactful moment for us. So all these people, really helped us along the way. And we've just been so fortunate to be able to spend time with them and be able to learn from their great wisdom.
Yeah, it's truly super unique, and I totally forgot until just this moment that you were on the podcast like 4 years ago or something about the original sale of the business.
Yes,
I forgot about that, and but I've just been so impressed, Rob. I mean, you are so intentional. I mean, you have embraced that way before we had come up with the intentional growth phrase or even the business, and you've been continuously pushing yourself into the areas that you enjoy and like. Right. And I think about, like when you talk about Bo's phrase of who are you, what do you want from the business and why? I mean, was that always instilled in you, or like, where did you get to this point where you're like, hey, this is what I want? Like, was that ingrained in you of being that clear?
No, what happened actually was I didn't really understand that was a thing. I didn't understand that in business. And my business is in Detroit. That's where it's headquartered, and it's very blue collar town. And the people that I would get connected with were entrepreneurs or leaders in blue collar businesses. A lot of the team members, the employees in their businesses were blue collar, and they were always at war with their employees. And I thought, do I always have to be at war with my employees to be successful? And I used to think that way. And I remember at one point thinking, I don't think I'm made for this. I'm not made to be an entrepreneur because I just don't have what it takes. So reading Bo's book was huge because it opened up a whole new world for me, that there's these companies out there that actually could be true to themselves. And so that's really, what really started it from a purposeful standpoint. And it was great timing, obviously, because we bought the business back. I wanted to mention one other thing, but your listeners are going to think it's a commercial, but it's not, I promise you. And Ryan has no idea that I'm about to say this, but COVID was a blessing in so many ways, although it absolutely crushed our business for a period of time. And we're still dealing with many of the issues from the pandemic. But one of the positive things that came out is I reconnected with you, Ryan, and your business partner, Pat Hobby. And your process was another one of those things, say I'm being interviewed in 10 years, that I will look back on and say that was a very impactful moment in my business and in my life, because you really started to help us see the business in a different way and think more deeply about where we were going with things long term. And because of the work that we've done with you and now Pat as a fractional CFO for us, my business partner and I actually have had put into place a succession plan, and we have a CEO in place now. So the two of us realized we'd hit our ceiling. And for us to grow this asset, this asset that we have, this business is an asset. It's a big part of our net worth. For us to really grow the asset, we needed to have a better person to take it to where we see it going, right? Which in our case is our 2026 vision. And so this has been huge for us. It accelerated something that I think was deep down in us, but we just didn't know what to do or how to go about it. So I thank you, Ryan and Pat, for helping us see the light there.
Again, thank you. That was unbelievably kind of you. And for the listeners, I didn't know that was coming. Otherwise, I wouldn't have let Rob do that. So, I mean, it's unbelievably humbling, which is on one of your one of the
core values.
I just didn't, to be in the same realm of Bo and Jack Stack and all that, of things that are truly being that are meaningful, that can help people make progress. I mean, that's all we all want. And you're doing something very unique now that I think can take everything that you just discussed, your whole journey. Because, I mean, I'm watching you're kind of ahead of the pack as far as like, hey, this new process, this new system, this is for the people that want to be intentional and do the right things. You're now on to something else that I want to talk about, what you and Gino are doing and the 10 disciplines. But you also have a podcast, you wrote a book, and I want to reference that too, because you're very mindful and you've been very honed in on that for a while. So maybe you kind of speak to that. What was your passion on the do nothing, the mindfulness, and kind of walk people through a little bit of what you've been doing over the years with that?
Sure. So a little bit back into my history, I had a lot of stress and anxiety growing up, starting around the age of 8. So I kind of had this like wiring. And as I went through my early adult years, and then got into, real life in my 20s and 30s. And I'm running a business with my best friend. I'm married. I have young kids, and something just didn't feel quite right. I always kind of had that stress and anxiety kind of looming over me, over every single thing that was going on in my life. And through lots of therapy, which was extremely useful, I started to learn about mindfulness and meditation. And I took on a practice back in '05, and it really stuck for me. What I learned from it is how to practice being in the present moment and not worry so much or be so concerned about what's happened in the past, or worry so much about what's going to happen in the future, knowing that I can't change the past and I certainly can't control the future, even though I used to like to think I could, and I still sometimes do like to think I can. But the practice has just been very useful for me, and it's just been one of those life tools. And I started going on these retreats that would be about 7 to 10 days, and during this time I would be in silence. And so inevitably, when I would come back, and people that I was that knew I had done it, they would be very curious about that, because for many people, being silent for any period of time seems daunting, never mind 7 to 10 days. And I agree, by the way. And so, but enough people in the leadership community, many of which are involved in some of those some of the things we've talked about earlier, like Small Giants, A Great Game of Business, and EOS, were, just really curious about how that all works. And a friend of mine said, it's, one of those classic stories, you ought to write a book about it. And then, he said, hey, you know what you could call it? Do nothing, because I'm sure you're just sitting around doing nothing on those retreats. And so it kind of stuck, and I took on the challenge. So I wrote a book about leadership and mindfulness. And it really just describes a little bit about my journey and how it became useful for me. It talks about the science around mindfulness and meditation, and how it can be useful as a leadership tool, but also obviously in our lives. And so for some, they may find that really connects, and for others, maybe not. But it really just depends on your level of curiosity and your openness to seeing if it would be something useful for you.
I think it's so super fascinating, Rob, because when you were on the show 4 years ago, whatever it was, I was not meditating. I still had my morning workout routine, and some of the other disciplines that you guys that we're going to dive into. I had some of those already baked in. Wasn't meditating, and like so many times I'd hear like, "Hey, this is how you should do this," and I'm like, I've been doing it for a year and a half now, and it's game changing. This is going to tee us up into the 10 disciplines, because I find it so fascinating, and I want to see if you can relate to this. I mean, I have the same thing with anxiety of like. My anxiety manifests in like, I have this vision. I'm a visionary, typical visionary, and I'm not there yet. Right. So like, and I want to be there yesterday. That's right. So then it's like, what happens is, I think, without having that clear path, you kind of just try to do it all at once. Or then there's like a lot of like, it's the flashy object syndrome, not trying to figure out what you focus on. And you're not sure, and you're not confident on what to execute on today. And then you can get burnt out, you get stressed out, it kind of ripples into your home life or your business life, your executives. And so when I went through your guys' online training that I'm very excited that you guys are going to be releasing to the world, and it's like, this would have been really nice to know a long time ago instead of trying to figure it all out on my own. It's like, and what I'm going to kind of tee it up, and you can kind of walk through what you and Gino are doing and why, and then we can unpack a couple of the different disciplines if we want to. But what I see is like, when you have a clear vision of all the kind of the multidimensional things that you want, and then you have this like structure, which you guys have laid out, like the anxiety dissipates, man. Like it's like you just wake up and you just execute, and you kind of know the boundaries, instead of having like pure potential everywhere, which is unbelievably stressful. And you guys have like eliminated that by saying, hey, if you clear this up, then you just have to wake up and do these things. And honestly, just like the stress just goes down. So I don't know if that tees it up, but I'm kind of sure. Why don't you explain the 10 disciplines, what you and Gino are doing and why?
Yeah, well, a little bit of the backstory on that. Gino and I developed a friendship like so many of the other people I mentioned. And we happened to live nearby each other. So we'd get together 2 or 3 times a year, like a coffee shop for like an afternoon. And we would just talk about life. And one of the things that I was gleaning off of Gino was the way he was living his life. It was just natural to him in many ways. And I'm a curious person. So I just ask lots of questions. And, I'd say, well, wow, you're doing that. And, wow, that's so interesting. And after we'd meet, I'd be reflecting and I'd think, boy, that's really good what he's doing. And, why aren't I doing that? And so I'd call him up and I'd say, Gino, how do you do that? And he'd give me some oversimplified answer because in many ways, it just became so natural for him. He didn't even really know how to describe what he was doing or how to teach it. And I would push him and he'd give me some insight, the best of his ability. And I realized that, he was really living an optimal life for him. And I could do the same. And it was just a light bulb for me. So I was able to take on some of those things and incorporate them in my life and live a more optimal life for me. Others, not so great. And fast forward to...
What does optimal life? Because I wrote that note when we were chatting right in front. So I don't know if you want to do it now or if you want to...
Sure. Yeah.
What is optimal life and energy?
Yeah. Optimal life is when you can reach your full potential. Because we all have so much potential, but we're oftentimes blocked. And it's where we could be the best expression of ourselves, our fullest capacity, our fullest potential, everything your soul wants you to be. Everything your soul wants you to be. And so that's optimal. And that's different for each and every one of us. Mm-hmm. And as we talk a little bit about the 10 disciplines, the listeners and you will understand that when you go through them, it's customizable to you as you start to understand better what your optimal life is for you. Okay, so let me stop there and I'll come back to energy in a second.
Yeah, I was going to say, go back to the story. Yeah.
So, so Gino, back to the story with Gino, he wrote a book called The EOS Life. And in the back of that book, which is now also a download on our website, but in the back of that book, he included what he called a mini book. And it's called The 10 Disciplines for Managing and Maximizing Your Energy. And I was a test reader on the book. And so I read these 10 and I sat back and I laughed and I said, oh my gosh, these are these things I've been asking him about after all these years. And I called him and I said, hey, you did a great job. These are the things I've been bugging you about. And I realized I'm not doing that one so great. And I'm really doing well on this one. And on the other one, I never even thought about it, never even asked you about it. And I said, these are really impactful. And I want to encourage you to do something with them. And if you don't have that in the plans, let me know. I'd like to maybe do something with you. And he said, I do have it in the plans. And one thing led to another, and the two of us began collaborating and ultimately created a partnership where we wanted to bring these to the world to really help 1 million people by 2030. And so what we did is we created, as a foundation, a video-based journey and a community to support the work. And so we encourage people to go in and take themselves through the video-based journey, which is essentially an online course. Mm-hmm. Videos where Gino does a teaching and I do a little Q&A with him. And then there's commitments. It's kind of like homework. This is where you really get the most out of it. You sit down and you do the work. You think through each one of these 10 disciplines. Then there's additional resources, which we highly encourage, but time is limited, so some people can't get to all of them. But these are things that will help you really hone in on each one of the disciplines and master them even more, whether it be right away or throughout time. So that's what we're up to with the 10 disciplines.
And I will reciprocate and say, I just completed all the videos. And, for me, like over the last, call it 15 plus years, I've stumbled into habits that work, honestly, out of pure fear that I'm a crazy person, right? I'm like, well, that doesn't work. I'm going to like put some guardrails in over here, kind of like what you were saying, Rob, of like, I want to just wake up and kind of just execute instead of wondering, am I on the right track every day?
Yeah.
The videos, I'm like, Like it's almost like it was like a reflection of like, oh, I'm doing that and that's working well, or that's not working very well. So I think what is so fascinating is it accelerates the framework, right? Of like, hey, here's how to think about these ways of managing your life to optimize your energy. Because like the last thing anybody wants to do is just wake up burnt out. I mean, that's, I think, one of the things I always say, Rob, is so many people call me up and they're like, I want out, or I'm so sick of this. And I think you and I both hold that never happens to people.
Right.
That they can make a choice for the reasons that they want to in their optimal life to have a succession plan and hire a CEO or sell the business, whatever the heck it is.
That's right.
It's on purpose, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I'm just very, very encouraged by what you guys have put together. So I don't know. Do you want to take the 10 disciplines and unpack them? Or I'm kind of curious, like maybe before that, or if you want to list them out, but which ones were impactful for you? And then we can maybe dive further into a couple of them.
Yeah, well, let me start with energy, because a lot of people are confused about like, what is managing and maximizing your energy? Like, do I wake up and I'm just energetic? That really isn't what it is. Energy is your power source. It's where you're doing the things that bring value to this world in a fluid way. You and I were talking before about a word that we've sort of invented. You're floating, you're in flow, and it feels like you're floating. And it's where you can flow freely, and it can be so strong, but the thing is it can also get blocked. And we don't want it to be blocked. And you know when it's blocked. Intuitively, you know. And you also know when it's flowing freely. And that's what we want to help you start paying attention to. And so through the 10 disciplines, each one of them kind of gives you a little bit of opening so it can flow. And they're all, as I know, having that you've been through some of them, or maybe all of them. I'm not sure where you're at with it, but you have. Okay, fantastic. So having been through all of them, you start to notice that there is an interconnection to them. And that's the beauty of it. And so when you can begin to not only build the foundation, but actually start to really master them, then you're flowing, and you're floating, and you're doing the things that bring tremendous value to this world. And they can be professional, but also, in your personal life, about just being fully present when it matters most. And so that's a little bit about energy.
I think what's interesting too is how you've just got to describe this float, and I'm gonna, as we go through the 10 disciplines, there's common threads between the 5 intentional growth principles in our philosophy and how they weave into the 10 disciplines.
Yeah,
but to start them out, we believe that intentional growth, the entrepreneurs, we want to create wealth, enjoy work, and make an impact, and they're all intersected. So if you're doing all those and you're focusing on creating the wealth, enjoying work, and making an impact, then you feel like you're making progress.
Yeah.
And I think that ties right into what you're talking about. That's really when you're floating. It's like hey, this is enjoyable and I can see what's going on, but don't do it to your detriment, right? So you don't wake up one day. And that's, I think, where the 10 disciplines come in and say, okay, great, I've now got clarity, but now how do I manage this?
That's right.
So that, if you want to list the 10 disciplines, I mean, because I could go and unpack a couple of them that I've got some entry in.
Why don't I start and then I'll follow your lead?
Okay, perfect.
But, I just want to build on something that you're saying, because entrepreneurs, people in leadership positions, they put their everything into it. And all of a sudden, one day they wake up and they realize they're not really all that happy. They missed a bunch of stuff that they wish they didn't miss. And they start reflecting on their lives with a bunch of, I wish this and I should have done that, and so on. And in many cases, they're just plain lost. And to your point, we don't want that to happen. That's when you're burnt out and you're floundering. And so this is a way to gain a little bit of control around that. They're fast, they're simple, they're powerful, and they're customizable, but that doesn't mean they're easy. They're not easy necessarily to incorporate in your life. I found that out myself when Gino was trying to, teach them to me kind of over those many years. And I was like, I'm having trouble with it. So that's what makes me so excited to bring these people, because I feel we can guide the people on the journey through it. And it starts with 10-year thinking. And this is where you're really picturing what your life looks like in 10 years. For some, that's a challenge, actually. And if that's the case, maybe you dial it back to 5 years, or 3 years, whatever you can kind of wrap your mind around, but ultimately moving to 10. Others love 20-year or even further out. But when you start thinking in that way, a couple of things start to happen. There's little things that you do in your life, and you start to change your behaviors, because you start saying, that's not how I want it to be in 10 years. So if I do this little behavior now, that's not in alignment with where I want to be in 10 years.
Well, I was going to say, in when you were doing the Q&A with Gino, you brought up a great question, which is, if people are, thinking Gino, they're thinking EOS, they're thinking VTO, they're thinking goals.
Yeah.
Why is the 10-year, or how is the 10-year thinking different than goal setting?
Yeah. Because you're just trying to put yourself in 10 years from now. So I'm 52. I'm at this moment of recording, and I'm going to be 62. And I'm just sort of picturing what my life is going to look like. It's like a happy family. I have some control over my time. Maybe there's, grandkids, or, I'm advising my businesses. You could call those goals, I guess, to a certain extent, but it's more of just like a vision. It's a picture I have in my mind. And so if I want a happy family, for example, I want to be really focused on how I treat my family at this moment, because if I don't treat them well right now, they're not going to be real happy with me or around me in 10 years. So that's different. Now, if you want to set a goal, and you want to set 3 or 4 goals that you want to have maybe a really specific net worth, or you want to have exited your business or something around, your professional, or maybe have a vacation home. And now I'm talking about material things, but it could even just be, something much simpler that isn't material. That's great. I encourage that. And that could be part of 10-year thinking too. But we just want you to start to wrap your mind around what little things you're doing today and how that fits into that picture that you see out 10 years from now.
Well, and Rob, what's so fascinating to me when I think about 10-year thinking is the things over my life that I've realized fall right into this discipline is, so Ray Dalio I'm a big advocate for Ray, and he talks about enjoying the journey along the way. It's not the goal. The goal is, the journey is what it's all about. And so that's when you establish that vision for your 10 years, you get to enjoy the time along the way. Yeah. And, in the intentional growth training, we talk about, figuring out your point B. And it's not the revenue number. It's so easy to say, I want to be a $10 million business.
Right.
Well, that was thoughtful. It's like, no, okay, like what about your family, your legacy, your impact, the options that you want? So you're hammering home why that long-term goal, it just calibrates everything. How else are you supposed to know what is important today or not if you don't have any guiding plan? So I thought it's so fascinating that you guys honed in on that.
And the other thing that you mentioned about stress, anxiety, especially if you're in business, you're an entrepreneur, you're leading a company, it can be quite stressful. There's good times, there's not as good times. And when you think out 10 years and you see that picture, time kind of slows down a little. You don't have to have it now. Everybody's always wanting it now. That's kind of how our society is wired, but we can slow down. And when we start to slow down, we actually could be more mindful, make better decisions. And ultimately what ends up happening usually is you get there faster. Mm-hmm. And so that's definitely a byproduct of 10-year thinking, is really just allowing ththings to slow down. And know that
related when Gino said that in the videos, I was like, oh my God, I actually completely relate to that. Because it was like, it's okay if it takes to the end of the year. It's not
That's
that
right.
big of a deal. And there was also another part, and then we can keep rolling if you want, is, there was 2 bad years, 4 okay.
That's right.
And 3 or 4 years, whatever the math was of good, really great, and terrible years. And we just got out of some couple really hard years, right? But it's okay when you realize that you're still on track.
That's right.
There's a reason for it.
10-year thinking during the pandemic for our business, I'm so happy I had tenure thinking wired in my brain, because it was stressful, especially at the beginning. As we mentioned, we provide offices with, printing equipment and
not homes, right?
yeah, not homes. And when folks aren't in the office, and by the way, they still aren't completely back in offices. And now there's supply chain issues. And I just keep looking to our tenure thinking and our vision and, just what that's going to look like. And it definitely slows things down. And then I start thinking about the possibilities. Where's the opportunity here? Because most people they got to fix it now. They're kind of stressed, anxious, and making probably poor decisions. And those people are going to open up opportunities in our industry for organizations like ours.
That's awesome.
I'm a big fan of Ray Dalio also, so I totally get that. The next one we talk about is taking time off. And we encourage people to take 130 days off per year. And here's the kicker: don't think about work the entire day. And so I always see people are like, oh my gosh, what? So just for
over and ignore you.
They just can't even. Yeah, it's like, wow. The first thing is the 130 days. But if you took every weekend off, pretty much every holiday, and you're already maybe taking around 3 weeks vacation, you're darn near close to 130 days. So if that helps at all with the listeners, take some solace there. But the not thinking about work the entire day, that's where people really get challenged. I was speaking with somebody recently, and he said, I was coaching him on this, and he said, I think I'm pretty good at actually not thinking about work the entire day. On a day off, I'll take like 2 or 3 phone calls, but that's it. Nothing else the entire day. I just had to laugh because, what we really want you to do is slow down and get away from the phone calls, the emails, not check in with the office, just be free of all of that. Let your mind be free and rejuvenate it. Because what ends up happening is you come back stronger. You come back more energized.
I think people I think we've turned the corner. I don't know what you think, Rob, but like they're the lie of the hustle, the side hustle, and the grind. It's like, this is just ridiculous. Like, you burn yourself into a pulp. And just ask anybody that's in public accounting how awesome it is or investment banking to work 100 hours a week.
Right.
And there was what came to my mind when I was listening to this discipline? There was a book I read a long time ago, Rob, and I don't know if you're familiar with Rich Roll, with you being a runner as well. Mm-hmm. So when I read his Finding Ultra, this dude ran 5 Ironmans in 5 days on 5 islands of Hawaii. It's like, okay, you're a total like superhero alien. But what he explained, and I can't remember, I might get the analogy a little bit wrong, but when he was training, or when he actually accomplished one of his best scores, he would like run a mile, walk a mile, run 3 miles, walk a mile. Mm-hmm. And like people would pass him by, and then and eventually he was just way ahead of the pack. Yeah. And I was just like, super fascinating.
No doubt. And I think some are good at the not hustle, not on, but not so good at just like peeking at their emails, because what we do is especially when it's a weekend, you're sitting there, maybe there's a break in the action, so to speak. And, it's like habit. You go on your phone, you're looking at your emails, and what we want to encourage you to do is work the muscle. Don't fall into that. Let it go. See what it feels like. It's probably going to be painful at first, because our mind likes to be busy. It likes to have something to be focused on. But getting away from business, getting away from our day-to-day, it, as I mentioned before, it re-energizes us, knowing that you'll go back stronger. One thing when you're on vacation, I always like to mention to people that we work with, this is what we find. The first couple of days of not checking in, so to speak, are very difficult. And when they approach the 3rd day, they start to notice something. And that is that all that stuff at the surface kind of starts to go away, dissipate into the air, floats away. And then what ends up happening, though, is there's a flurry of really great stuff that comes to the surface because it's been buried below because you haven't had a chance to clear your mind. And so the reaction to that is to grab a piece of paper, write down all these great ideas or all these things you need to do when you get back. And what we encourage is also just be with that. Know that the great idea will come back to you when you come home from your vacation. If it's that good, it'll come back. But let that go too. And after a day or two of that starts to go away. And you start to ease in to this freedom being away from your business. But then what happens is like an amazing idea comes to the surface because that's the really good ones are like 3 levels down. And when that happens, I actually encourage that you do grab the piece of paper and jot it down. So when you get back, but it's down there, but you have to set it free. You have to set everything else free. And the only way to do that is to turn it off.
I've done that successfully and I've failed at that more than I've succeeded. Yeah. But you're so right. Like you just get one thing, one email, and the feelings that linger for a long time off of just looking at one thing, I think it just completely validates your point.
Mm-hmm. All right. So another really important component here and discipline is the third one, which is know thyself. And this is a life's journey. What we want people to do here is have the freedom to be themselves 100% of the time, 24/7, 365. But the sad fact is most people aren't. And I like to use this, your listeners can kind of go through this exercise. You picture yourself being invited to 2 parties. One's a pre-party for an industry conference you're going to or a summit. The other's a party with close friends, both old and new. And you're at the doorway of the party for the industry. It's the night before the conference is going to kick off or the summit. And you stop at the doorway and you scan the room. And I ask people to kind of feel into their body and what sort of sensations that they're feeling at that moment. And then start to notice what kind of emotions are coming up. So it might be like their body might feel like a tinge of stress, like on their lower back, tense, they might be trying to figure things out. The emotion might be nervousness or, dread for some people. Other people, it's like great excitement. They love new rooms, new people. And then you walk in and you start interacting with people. And are you 100% you as you do as you're interacting with some people, maybe you kind of know, some people you've known over the years, maybe new people. Now I take you out of that scenario and you go to the party with your new friends, old friends, people you're comfortable with. Same scenario. You're at the doorway. You look in. What sensations come up for you in your body? What emotions are coming up? Usually there's a lightness that people feel and an emotion of excitement. They can't get. It's like, who do I go to first and hug? And you're so you. You speak your language. You act your way. You're not self-conscious. One of the people we were working with, when we went through this exercise, he said, I'm proud that I'm a chameleon. I find myself fitting into the environment, whatever environment I'm faced with. And I thought to myself, I'm sad for him because we don't want to be chameleons. We want to be us. The unique us is what people like because it's authentic. People pick up on the energy of a chameleon. Like something's not quite right, but you don't really know what it is. But when you're you, they know what they got. Whether they love it or they don't love it, they know what they got and they appreciate that. And so that's know thyself.
Well, and it's so interesting too, is like, when you talk about the energy, like how energy draining it is to not be yourself. Like I've been there, man. Again, the various jobs I've had or careers, when I say jobs, or the figuring it out phases of the entrepreneurial career, like try this on. Well, that doesn't feel good. Try this on. It's like at some point I just need to, the energy just zaps you and then you can't be yourself at all. So that's right. I really like this one. And it just ties right into too, Bo's, the theme of this series of who are you, what do you want, and why.
That's right.
I mean, figure that out. Don't do it for other people. Like, you're doing it for yourself.
That's right. You are. That's exactly right. Why don't we talk about saying no and doing it often? So I'm skipping around a little. Good job.
I had to do that, man.
You know, I like to say, I like to share, I should say, if anyone's familiar with Enneagram, it's a personality profiling tool, which is a great way to get to know thyself. And there are many personality profiling tools to do that. And I encourage that you check as many out as you can, by the way, because they all give you a little of insight into yourself. Now, in Enneagram for me, I'm a type 2 and a type 3. And the type 2 is the helper, and the type 3 is the achiever. And so when somebody asks me for something, you know, I want to say yes because I'm a helper. And then once I say yes, I'm like all in because I'm an achiever. Like, I'm not going to help you kind of.
I'm helping you.
I'm going to help you 110%. So, you know, I have a hard time saying no. And it's a muscle that I have to work and be really mindful of on a consistent basis. Now, an example that I like to share with people, especially many of your listeners who are successful, high performers, entrepreneurs, leaders, is, you know, you've worked really hard to get where you're at. And so people begin to recognize that in you, and they want to be around you. You know, they see a successful person. And so, you know, you might get a call, for example, from the executive director of a local nonprofit that a friend of yours is on the board of. And your friend thought you'd be a great addition to that board, which you would be, by the way. And the executive director says, I'd be humbled and honored. I've learned so much about you. You're an amazing person in the community. Your business is outstanding, and I know you would add tremendous value to our board. Would you be willing to join? And you're humbled. And it's like your life's work is coming together when people start asking you for things like that. So how can you say no? So you say yes, and you think, this is going to be great. I'm going to make an impact. And so the first board meeting's about 6 weeks from now, and about a week before the board meeting, you get a email from the executive director directed to the other people on the board and you, and it says, attached is the board, the board notes for our upcoming meeting this week. You know, please take the time to review it. And so you can come prepared and we can have a healthy discussion during our 2 hours together. And so you open up the attachment real quick just to take a look at the 20 to 30 pages that you're supposed to review.
And the attached financials.
Financials. And you start looking through it, and you start looking at your calendar, and you start thinking, when am I supposed to work on this? Because I need to show up and I need to be prepared. I don't want to be that person. And you start thinking, well, maybe I can look at it on my smartphone at one of my kids' soccer games this weekend. This is how you're trying to fit it in. Mm-hmm. And this feeling of dread is coming over you, but you're pushing it back because you said yes, you want to do it. Mm. And then it's the day before, you kind of got through the board package, you kind of skimmed it, you think you can get by, and you're looking at your calendar, and it's a 25-minute drive to the meeting both ways. So you got an hour drive time basically and 2 hours there. Plus, while you're there, you got 15 minutes of niceties at the beginning and 15 minutes at the end. So all in, you're about a half a day.
Well, then let's just load on that. Probably a couple other board members asked you for a couple of things while you're there as well.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I didn't think about that, but that's likely to happen. And so this is what can happen when the dominoes fall around saying yes instead of saying no. Now, my point here is not to say no to these wonderful opportunities. Obviously, if you're passionate about that nonprofit or whatever it is, by all means, go bring your value, because that time won't have the same quality that it had in the example that I gave. You won't feel dread. You'll be happy to review the board package. You'll put time on your calendar. You won't feel like it's chopping into other things. Mm-hmm. But if it is going to take on that quality that I described, you must say no and free yourself so you can use that energy that you have to bring the value, your true value, to this world. That helps you live your optimal life.
Well, and let's weave it into the first discipline, which is if you have a 10-year vision, like 10-year thinking,
that's right.
It's going to be more obvious of what you should be saying yes or no to. And if
that's
you
right.
and you going back to like taking the time off, the reason most people can't take time off is because they say yes to too many things.
That's right.
And like, you know what's interesting, because I love how you guys brought up, and Gino brought up the book Essentialism. I read that book too, and I was like, oh great, this is a 14-hour Audible book about how to say no. And I was like,
it's a great
and I suck at it, man. I've gotten better, but what I thought was a unique highlight I wanted to call out that you and Gino were talking about is by ultimately ending up failing at following through with these things,
that's right.
You're degrading trust that other people have in you that I don't think anybody wants. Like that's a terrifying thing to know that you're just eroding trust and your reputation all over the place.
Yeah.
That I thought was like, if someone has a hard time saying no, like that's something that you should protect no matter what. And like
absolutely.
That's a second order effect that I don't think a lot of people think about.
You're right on about that. And, it's hard, as I mentioned, for many. So what I encourage is, start by saying no to 25% of the things that you would have said yes to. It's a great start. And then you'll start to notice how great it feels. And you'll start saying no to many other things. And by saying no, you're not a bad person. People respect it, and there's great ways to go about that. We talk about that in the video-based journey. And so there's great ways that you can say no, and people feel really good about it. And you should too, when you ultimately do it. All right, let's go on to put everything in one place. And this is what we're encouraging you here is to find one place in your world, one place where you capture every idea, commitment, thought, action item, and promise. And what ends up happening for many of us that, are going through our days and having a lot come at us is we're trying to keep a lot of stuff in our head, which isn't a good strategy. And we know we can't do that. So then we just grab random pieces of paper or the newest, latest, greatest journal or Post-it, or we grab our phone and we just start putting little notes and reminders all over the place, everywhere. and then we're trying to like work it all out. And unfortunately, what's ended up happening, kind of to your point on saying no often, is actually we're letting people down. And oftentimes because of the position we're in, people don't actually tell us. So in many ways, we don't even realize it. We just get known for not following through on certain things.
Oh, did I pull the trust thing out of the wrong discipline? I think I just caught
they're all
myself
interconnected.
Yeah, I was going to say, there you go.
They're all interconnected.
Let's go with that.
Yeah, no, it's true. They're all interconnected. I love that you did that, actually. And so, this is simple, but so powerful. So, whatever it is, Gino happens to use an good old-fashioned legal pad, the yellow legal pad. He has that by his side, every moment. And if you ever see him, you'll see him walk in with that thing and his paper or his pen, and he's jotting down notes. Other people use a journal. There's a great resource out there. The Full Focus Journal is really great. If you like technology, there's a thing called Remarkable, and that's a really cool tool. There's
crazy when you guys were going through resources. I had tried, but you're trying them all, and just out of pure like stumbling on my top of myself. You know what I ended up landing on, Rob? And I don't know if you're familiar with it. Is the bullet journal?
No, I'm not familiar with it.
The bullet journal, it was like, boom. I went to the website, and this guy named Ryder, I mean, he's got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of followers. And it was the analog way to capture manager to-dos in your life for the ADHD entrepreneur in the technology world. And I was like, wow, sign me up. But it was like, it's very fascinating, but it's exactly what you guys are talking about. And again, it's another way I've watched stress just dissipate versus Evernote and OneDrive or OneNote, and like there's just stuff everywhere. And Rob, I gotta call out my marketing coordinator because he's been working with us now for about a year, and this is like, God, I don't remember, like 6 months ago or something, and he was writing notes. We're sitting there talking, and he's got this little pad of paper, and he's writing them. I'm like, dude, what's your plan with that? And he kind of just looked at me, and I'm like, I go, I'm just going to give you an example. His name is Scott. So Scott, I love you, man. And I said, I kind of feel like I'm sitting there and the waiter or waitress is taking an order of my family with 5 people with nothing. I'm like, the chances you mess this up are like 100%. Yeah. So like, explain to me what you're going to do with this after we're done with this meeting. He kind of just looked at me and I was like, you need a system, man.
So good. I love the analogy of the waiter or the waitress, the server. I feel that same way. And also, I love that you talked about the bullet journal because, while we have different ideas, what we encourage is that you find the thing that works best for you, because we don't have the exact thing that you should go to. Each one of these disciplines is fully customizable to your unique self. And so you find what works from you. And sometimes it's trial and error. I mean, you've gone through some different things and you landed on something that's really working great. And that's the important thing.
And again, an endorsement for what you guys are doing, because that took me like 9 years to get to that point, and versus just having a system that like, hey, like this is why this is important.
That's right. And at the end when you have that one place, at the end of the day, you just sit down and you figure out where it all goes, and hopefully through the discipline, some of which I kind of skipped over to respect time, but hopefully you're learning to delegate a lot of the items which are on that list. And so you're only doing the things that are really, truly where you're bringing value to this world. And so that's the power of the one place.
So, and I want to, like you said, for the respect of time here, if we got 10, 15 more minutes, I want to maybe touch on, I'm looking over at I have the 10 disciplines up on my screen, is the $25 an hour work, and then the prepare every night, because I think those two are so powerful. Okay,
let me start with prepare every night, because it kind of leads into the last one we talked about, which is put everything in one place. But discipline number 8, it's really simple, actually. Preparing every night. So simply, before your head hits the pillow every night, document the next day's plan. It takes like 5 or 10 minutes tops. And all you're doing is you just take whatever works for you, piece of paper. It doesn't have to be your one place, but it can be. And you just jot out what the next day looks like. And that includes, like, you and I do some exercise in the morning. And it's literally jotting out all that stuff, not just what your appointments are, your meetings. You're holding it up. There it is. All right, love it. So you're just jotting it out. And by doing it sort of at the end of the day, or maybe even closer to when you're ready to kind of turn it off for the night and go to bed, is you're ingraining the next day into your subconscious. And first of all, you will sleep better, because you won't be spinning like, okay, wait, what do I've got going on? Because you just got really clear about it. Mm-hmm. Then your subconscious starts to do the work while you're sleeping. I mean, we all know that that's what happens when we sleep. And so you have some challenges, some things you're working on, and your subconscious starts helping. And when you wake up, oftentimes you have an answer. It's just, you're like, oh, wow, where did that come from? Great. Mm-hmm. And you also hit the ground running, because you're so clear on what you need to do. You're not letting the world come to you. You're going to the world, and you have some control over that. Look, 85% of the time, I mean, some percentage of the time, we're going to get thrown off balance. That's to be expected. And that's life. We should embrace it. We can't control everything, but that's the power of preparing every night. It's just really understanding what you got going on tomorrow, letting your subconscious do the work. And then when you get up, you know exactly what you're going to do to take the day on.
I can't stress this one enough, because I've personally struggled and then found the benefit from doing this. And again, this is all kind of tied into my bullet journaling habit and then my morning routine. But Rob, the amount of entrepreneurs I know that struggle with sleep, and then it's like, hey, we're going to have a handful of cocktails at night because we're going to just wind down, or whatever the thought is, because you're going back to then the one place. I'm pulling on all the disciplines, but by having everything in one place and then planning everything at night, I mean, I just don't have to worry about it. I don't have to pretend to hold all the information in my head at once. And when you hit the pill, there's zero chance you can fall asleep. And I so many entrepreneurs struggle with sleep. And then it's like, then you're thinking about all that stuff, and then you have no energy because you got no sleep, and then it just like
it snowballs. It's a domino. It all starts falling, and you're so right about that. Now, the other discipline you asked me about is number 7, don't do $25 an hour work. And just simply stated, don't do anything that you could pay somebody $25 an hour to do. And so a couple things I'll hit on as it relates to this. First of all, just let me get this out in the open. There's nothing wrong with $25 an hour work. Mm-hmm. It's important work. There's people that are dying to do it, and they're really good at it. Mm-hmm. For you, you're a high performer. Most likely $25 an hour work is not the sort of work that you should be doing so you can bring your greatest value to the world. Mm-hmm. And have all that and be able to float where you're flowing and it feels like you're floating. So as it relates to this, you want to look at your world and start recognizing what pay rate is the work you're doing right now. And if it's in that $25 an hour range, obviously you want to try to get it off your plate. Delegating is the most logical thing that comes to mind to do that, or stop doing it. Now, most of the people that are listening, I would imagine, are making 6 figures or would like to make 6 figures. And when you think about the math, doing $25 an hour work does not add up to 6 figures.
Yeah, it's 50 grand.
It's $50,000 a year work. So if you think about that when you're doing X, Y, or Z, and you say to yourself, I'm doing $50,000 an hour work right now, but I'm a $250,000 person. Mm-hmm. You just understand you're not doing work at the right pay rate. And so that's the whole idea around it. And not just in your business, by the way, personally, I learned over 20 years ago that I could actually pay somebody to mow my lawn. I didn't know that before. I was wired that I was supposed to mow my lawn, and every Saturday I would get up and it would take me 2 or 3 hours, and I dreaded every moment of it. And I was irritated. I was away from my wife and my kids, and just frustrated that I even had to do that. And somebody said, why don't you pay somebody to do it? I was like, I must be really slow because I never actually thought about doing that. And when I did, it was the greatest thing ever. And so if you love mowing your lawn, and some people do, by all means do it.
And that's me, by the way. Out of all of the whole house chores, that's the one, because I listen to books and I get to get immediate gratification of not cut lawn, cut lawn.
Yes.
That's why I like painting too. But it's funny. So our dear friend, Mr. Pat Hobby, if you ask him what his toolbox consists of, he says 2 things. A pen and a checkbook.
That's good. That is so good. And mine is the exact same way. So I could totally relate. I can't run as far away from household things as please.
Well, and Rob, I think this is an interesting, as we're going to be coming to a close in the next 5-10 minutes, is this, all these disciplines tie together, and how they relate to the intentional growth principles, and that the intentional growth mindset too is, you talked about you and Joel having a succession plan where you have a CEO now. And so it's not necessarily just $25 an hour work, but it's about elevating yourself into the position to have the impact, have the enjoyment, and make the wealth that you want. And you're going to be coming back on the show when we're talking about how to view your company as a financial asset, but we're not going to get into that today. But that's, if someone has that desire, their 10-year plan is to collect distributions or be an investor or whatever it is, they're going to have to plan on how to get there. So I think you and Gino mentioned it in the videos, but if you can't afford it right now and you're a startup or whatever it is, then you're just building the plan of when can you afford that. So you're just saying, okay, here are what did you guys go through? Here's the list. And then you're just building the financial plan to say, okay, here's when I can delegate those things.
Right.
You guys never assumed that people could just go do that right now. It's hey, you layer on the 10 years, you layer on what you want, and then you say, okay, well, here's why I would delegate the things that I would delegate. And I think it's a great concept.
Yeah, and it's baby steps. To your point, it doesn't all have to be right now. You do a little bit at a time and you make your way through it. You've built the foundation. So you have the mindset. Maybe at this moment you can't delegate certain things. but maybe you can delegate one thing and you start there, and then you delegate the next thing and the next thing. Gino always says anything he's ever delegated, he's always received at least a 5 times return on that delegation. So if you delegate $25 an hour work, you're probably going to get $125 return on that investment within a year. Mm-hmm. So that's something that I always want to encourage people to think about. You will receive an ROI. You will start to see it. Mm-hmm. I also want to touch on what you mentioned about being intentional with your business and how we had a succession with to have us come out of this. Joel and I were co-CEOs, and have us come out of that seat and have somebody sit there for us. And one of the disciplines is that we talked about is know thyself. And it was important for the two of us to go through this process together. And one of the things I knew about myself was that I hit a ceiling. And if I wanted this company to hit its 2026 vision as co-CEO, I would hold it back. That's my role, co-CEO. As shareholder, co-owner with Joel, my asset could be disrupted because the wrong person is running the company. Just so happens it's me. And Joel and I really had to talk a lot about that and come to terms with knowing ourselves and our capabilities to where we could take the company. And having a CEO in place is an investment. I mean, we could not have that person in place and we could take the income, so to speak, and to me, that's not 10-year thinking. That's short-term thinking. Yep. And I want to build our asset in which is our business.
And honestly, I'm going to tie in another one of your disciplines, and that's the last one, which is, I think that you guys are capable of doing this because you're humble, Rob. And I can say that to you because it's hard to say that you yourself are humble, but there's so many people that just can't, they're just incapable because of their ego and their desire to control things and be the last decision for everybody that aren't capable of doing what you're saying. But and I think that, and honestly, kind of just encapsulating all the 10 disciplines, this kind of work can allow people to do what you're doing, right? Because it takes work, and I think there was a podcast 3-4 years ago I did with someone where it's kind of talking about this topic of how do you figure out more about what yourself and how do you figure out what you want, and they just said, just sit there and think about it. I'm like, well, that's just the worst advice ever, I thought, because it's just do it as maybe for sports, but not for this kind of deep reflection. You've built a structure. So if someone desires what you just said, that's the 10-year goal or the vision that they have. Yeah, you've got a structure to go get there, and it's not just do it all today. So I think which dissipates the anxiety. And have you guys talked about how all of these disciplines interconnect, or is it just kind of just assumed because you can't pull really one of them out?
Well, when you start talking about them in the way that you and I are, you notice how interconnected they are. I mean, we have them in an order, but you and I didn't go through them in order today. But what you start to notice is one has something to do with the other, and et cetera. They're all interconnected, just like all of us in life. It's energy. It's energy. It's our power source. And that's why it's all interconnected.
All right, Rob, this has been so awesome, man. So a couple of final questions for you. One is, before we get into the kind of the final wrap-up questions, one is, what do you and Gino hope for the book? What do you, if you, in your 10 years, what is it that you hope you guys did with the book and with what you guys are doing?
Well, with the ebook, and then we'll be coming out with another book, is the hopes. That's building on what we have now, which is the 10 disciplines. Right now, we're building a strong foundation with the video-based journey, this course, which has the commitments that come along with them, meaning we really want the people that join into this community to take this seriously, do the work, and by building that foundation, it will be stronger for you moving forward. And the future holds something deeper, something greater, but I can't talk about that right now because I don't know what it is. We're just open to the possibilities and very curious about where that energy takes us, but we know there's something there and we're very excited about it. But
And
this
1
is
million,
enough for now.
1 million, but there's a goal because
Yes.
Gino had a goal with EOS, and you've got
That's
kind of
right.
a quantified goal of 1 million people.
With
that
the
you
10
want to reach.
disciplines, our goal is 1 million souls affected by 2030. Souls.
Oh, that's awesome. Souls. I like it.
Souls.
I love it. And then, so where can people find the 10 disciplines, contact information, all that kind of stuff?
It's the10disciplines.com. The10disciplines.com.
And then the last and my favorite question, what does the word intentional mean for you?
I love that you always ask that, Ryan. Well, to me, the thing that always rings true is thoughtful and purposeful and clarity.
Ooh.
And that takes time and curiosity.
Wow, that was awesome, man. Rob, this is so. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I appreciate
Ryan,
it.
thank you for having me. You're the best.